Another change with the new tort reform package passed by the legislature is we changed from a comparative negligence state. So the way it used to work in Florida is if you were in an accident or if you had a trip and fall or slip and fall, and the jury determined that that company individual was at fault for your injuries, you would get a recovery for that. Now you could be considered what's called comparatively at fault. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about a trip and fall. That's about the easiest one. Sometimes they would say, gosh, the business should have fixed that area, but you know what? You should have seen that defect. If you would have been paying a little bit closer attention, you would have seen that defect. The jury could say, you know what? I find you 40% at fault. I find the other side 60% at fault. Sometimes the jury, even in trip and fall cases, would say, you know, I think they did something wrong, but really, you really should have seen it, but I'm gonna hold them accountable. And they'd say, you're 80% at fault and you're 20% at fault. So you personally are 80% at fault. So what would happen is, let's just say a verdict of $100,000. You would only get $20,000. The way the law changed is now, even if you prove the company or the person was at fault, if you don't prove they're more than 50% at fault, you get no recovery. So you can prove that the person or the company did something wrong and they should have corrected the issue or shouldn't have caused the accident or shouldn't have been, and they will say, you know what, if you're not more than 50% at fault, it's good, in my opinion, someone that's practiced in this area of the law for a long time, I think it's gonna cause trip and fall cases to be difficult, if not impossible in a lot of scenarios, because there's always some idea of comparative negligence in those cases previously. And now I think, even though you can prove those cases, and I would definitely take them in the right circumstance, I think the insurance companies are gonna approach it that they're difficult cases already, and we're not gonna pay as much or not pay anything on these cases, because they usually fight those cases anyway, because they know if they can just prove that it's a 50-50 case, that you're gonna get no recovery, and that's very important in the future. So when you're looking at how this new law and the comparative contributory negligence is gonna affect you, that's why it's maybe more important than ever to have an attorney involved, because the evidence is gonna be so important. In a trip and fall or slip and fall, it's going to be even more important to have that expert involved to do what's called a coefficient of friction testing on the floor to see how slippery the floor was. Because a lot of floors, surprisingly, are not correctly done by the installer. And they use the wrong kind of tile, they use the wrong kind of paint, if they're painting the floor, that kind of thing, and that needs to be analyzed. Also, you need to look at video, and we need to get that video, and the video goes away if it's not requested. Because the insurance company doesn't have to maintain the video and the business doesn't have to maintain the video if it's never been asked for. So that evidence to show what was in that area, to show what caused the issue, is vitally important. What also can be important in these contributory type cases is the evidence in a motor vehicle accident. Because a lot of times we can get other evidence, whether it's a red light camera, whether it's a camera from a nearby business, whether it's a dash camera that's going to show what caused the crash. Those are important factors, because a lot of times if it's just testimony and it's a he said, she said type of thing, and it looks like a 50-50 case, that 50-50 case is now a very dangerous case for you to take to litigation and trial without that extra evidence to push you over the edge. Because if it's 50-50, you don't prove it's 51-49, you're not going to get any recovery for you. So it's going to be even more important to hire an attorney, but most importantly, hire an attorney that has experience and knows how to handle that case, how to gather that evidence, how to get the right experts involved from day one.